Hey Alice, how are you?
Hi, Marcus. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. And for people who are watching who thought this was going to happen last week, we had a little bit of a technical hiccup. So we're going to do it all over again.
Great.
And I'm super excited to get a tour of a real castle with a real life actual princess, because you are a genuine princess, aren't you? Tell us about yourself, first of all.
Well, first of all, I'm Italian. I studied interior architecture, and I've become, in the last years, first I was an exhibition designer, now I'm a design curator. So I live in Austria, and I've been here for 17 years now. And the last 6 years, I've been living in a castle, as it happens in Austria. And I started this program, which is called Schloss Hollenegg for Design, which supports design culture and supports emerging designers. So every year we have designers in residence over the summer, and together we prepare an exhibition, which is always in May. So what we're going to be seeing afterwards is the result of a year's work, and it's the exhibition which is currently on show.
And we can talk about the design in a minute, but tell me about being a princess. How did you get to be a princess?
Well, I guess I married the right guy, didn't I?
I mean, you have told me this story before when we met about 18 months ago in Brussels, wasn't it? We were both on the selection committee for Collectible.
Oh, Collectible.
Yeah, and but tell us the story. It's so lovely.
Well, actually, I was on a sailing holiday, and I happened to quite like the skipper, who initially wasn't particularly keen on me, and then did change his mind in the end. And I thought he was just a lumberjack. So I was quite taken by this lumberjack who did skippering in the summer holidays. And I had the shock of my life when I then came to visit him in Austria, and I realized that he was nothing like a lumberjack, and he did own a castle. So that was kind of, but at that point it was a little bit too late. So I couldn't really step back and say, no, that's not for me.
But the castle Schloss Hollenegg is in Styria in Austria, but your husband is a member of the Liechtenstein royal family or something.
Yeah, but the Liechtenstein family, there's a lot of them, first of all, and they don't all live in Liechtenstein, because originally it's actually a family from Bohemia, and historically they've always lived in Austria. So there's the head of a family is the only one who lives in Liechtenstein, and that's been so only since World War II. So most of the Liechtenstein actually live in Austria.
And you said that he's a lumberjack because I guess forestry is a big part of the economy of Liechtenstein, probably most of the
also of Austria. So timber export is a very big part of Austrian economy, and they're very advanced in the way that they manage the forests. So yes, what he does is forestry.
And tell us about the castle, because it's a shame we can't see it, actually. I mean, it doesn't look like you're exactly in the ballroom. Are you in the...
If I were in the ballroom, we would have terrible reception again. So we're actually in the room which is highest up underneath the roof, which is my office, which looks extremely modern, but I have Wi-Fi. So that's a big advantage. But you will see quite a bit of the castle afterwards in the tour. So you get to see a good deal of it. The castle, the first mention of the castle goes back to 1163. And it was built then throughout the centuries. So we have medieval outer walls. We have two 14th century towers on both ends of the castle. We have a courtyard, which is a Renaissance courtyard from the 16th century. We have a Baroque church in the second courtyard. There's a lot of Baroque decorated room, and the main Saal, which is where part of the exhibition is. And then there was neo-Gothic additions, and in the 19th century they built a terrace. So when we moved here 6 years ago, it felt like, okay, what are we going to add to the place, since every generation has done something? And so design felt like a really fitting next step, especially since I've been working in design for 20 years now. And it was like, okay, this is our kind of contribution. Let's make this a place where contemporary objects can live next to historical artifacts.
So tell us about the Schloss Hollenegg for Design program. The castle is private residence, isn't it? People can't just come and have a look around whenever they want, but every year for the last few years, you've put on this exhibition and opened it to the public. So tell us about the program and how long you've been doing it and how it works.
So when we moved, I really felt like there was such a treasure trove, and I thought, well, this place is so inspiring, and it'd be really amazing to have, you know, designers coming in, spending some time learning about the place, getting inspiration from the different objects. So that's how it started. And then I realized, well, if they're going to work on a project, then we need to have an exhibition to really present what we're doing. So every year we have designers coming in the summer months. They get given a theme, and they have to let themselves be, you know, inspired by the place, the history as well. And it's a way of combining the theme with the history. And then other designers are also invited. Maybe there are designers who already have a project which is fitting to the theme. There are designers that don't necessarily come in residence, but still participate in the exhibition. So we work pretty much a whole year, because then the exhibition is the following May. And only during the time of the exhibition, people, the castle is open to the public, and people are invited to come and, you know, look through the rooms and look at the exhibition. The rest of the time is just a private home. So we don't live in the whole castle. We just live in a smaller part of it. And then we open up the more historical rooms. So the exhibition doesn't actually happen in the part that we live in.
And what is the point of the design platform? Is it to help young designers? Is it a business venture? Is it to, what's the reason for doing it?
Well, it's definitely not a business venture. So we're a non-profit. And the idea is, on one side, obviously to support young designers. So we're offering a platform to emerging designers. So we try and choose designers which have already a little bit of experience, but who need like a little bit of support, a little bit of press visibility. And then on the other hand, what we do is, what was really important for me from the beginning, was to offer a cultural event in the area where we are. So everything always happens in the big cities, but people in the countryside are just as interested and just as much in need of having, you know, exhibitions or knowing what's going on. So for me, that was a really important part of the project. Is, okay, not everything has to happen in a big town. You know, you can have things which are interesting happening outside. And the first year it was funny, because people really did not get it. And they were kind of like, really, you know, they came because they wanted to see the castle. And now it's incredible, because after 5 years, you know, even people in the area, or all the way to Graz as well, which is about an hour, they really come because they know that they are going to see something which they don't normally get to see. So something which is more experimental, which is interesting, which is contemporary.
And the pieces, they can buy the pieces if they want to, or collectors can buy the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, there are collectors that come, and what I do is I try and put them in touch with the designers. So obviously, yes, not everything is on sale, because there are a lot of projects which are more of a prototype level. So there are some things which are very experimental. There are some things which are not fully developed. But there's always like a few pieces which are very good for the market. And we have sold in the past years, every year something. I don't do that personally. What I do is I just facilitate it. So I try and put the designer and the buyer in contact.
But you're working with a platform called Adorno. Is that like a collectors or a curators platform, so that people?
Yeah, so that's exactly the same. That's the same thing. So we build this collaboration. So the designers that are interested in selling their pieces, they can do that through Adorno. Because this year we didn't have the possibility, obviously, of having collectors coming in. So we felt, okay, well, this might be a really good opportunity of doing it in another way and getting the designers more visibility as well.
And of course, the reason we're doing this virtual tour, and the reason you did the Instagram tour last week, is because we're in the coronavirus time, so people can't come to the castle. So how has that been for you? How has it been to put on an exhibition as ambitious as this, working with designers all around the world, that you know people can't come to in person?
Well, so I was very optimistic at the beginning, all the way through February, and I was like, wow, I'm sure we'll be fine. And you know, and because I am in a little bit of a remote area, I start the communication very early. So by beginning of March, I've already started sending out invitations, and I already have most of the projects in-house, at least half of them, because we usually try and do the catalog before the opening. So when I realized, okay, we're not going to be having the exhibition, I was ready for the exhibition already. It wasn't like I still had so much work that, you know, I had invested the money, we had a lot of the pieces here, the whole machinery was gone, so it was already started. So I was like, well, I can't cancel. It felt like so wrong. And at the same time, I knew that I wouldn't be able to postpone for various reasons. So I just thought, well, you know, I have people who come, but I also know that I have a very international audience that follow what I do without necessarily ever having been here. And I thought, well, this is just the perfect time to, you know, try it out and experiment it. And I also realized that people were just, you know, everyone was just in front of their computer. Everyone was in need of content, of like finding things and being interested. So I thought, well, it's actually the perfect situation because, you know, I have everyone's attention. And if I do this, that there'll be something to see. So it's worked out amazingly. I have to say, I don't regret for a single moment. I had quite a few people telling me, oh no, postpone, cancel, it's just not going to work. And I was just, no, let's try it. It's been amazing because I've learned so much about how to communicate online, what works, what doesn't work. You know, even just the fact that we couldn't do the Instagram live streaming last week, you know, okay, fine. Everyone in these times is a lot more flexible. So it's like, okay, good. We know that doesn't work as well. So we're doing the Zoom today. So I think that's all experience that we're going to take on with us, because even when people can go to places and see things, I think this part of the communication is not going to go away.
Now, I think it's really interesting. I mean, is it even possible that the show has had more impact because people can't go to it? Like the New York Times did a write-up on it. I've seen loads of mentions of it. It feels like this year maybe the program has had more publicity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. I mean, obviously, the people in the area and in Graz have definitely missed out, especially because I have a lot of young people that come, a lot of schools, and a lot of seniors. So obviously, those are the two kind of age brackets that are missing out. But on an international level, I've had amazing visibility. So I think this year the communication has been much better because there hasn't been a lot of other things really happening. So this is, you know, one of the few things which is really a new exhibition being opened.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
There have been lots of things happening online and virtually.
Yeah, exactly.
Your show is like a real physical thing in a really interesting part of the world. I mean, you've invited me a few times, and I've always thought, when am I ever going to get to go to a remote part of Austria? It's just not going to happen. But this is actually is a chance for me to have a chat with you and see the castle finally without actually leaving my home. It's great.
Yeah, no, it works. I mean, I still prefer when people do come, because it's also we've really built a bit of a community. So there are designers that have come every year, even if they were not in the show. It's a very beautiful place, but at the same time very informal. So I think when people do come, it's, you know, there's a whole atmosphere which you can't communicate. But I think it's great that people still get to see it this way. So, and yeah, I'm happy you still get to see some of it.
And what are your ambitions for the design platform? Are you going to build up a collection and open a museum, or where can it go? Are you just happy to do a show every year, or do you have bigger plans?
Well, I think there is definitely potential. The way I see it is a kind of yes, I'm definitely building a collection in the sense that the pieces from the designers in residence, they then stay. One of the pieces then stays here. So as the year go by, we have more and more contemporary pieces in the historical rooms. But what it's interesting for me is just to develop this platform as a kind of educational tool and a communication tool for the designers. So I'd like to do maybe not more exhibitions, but have, I don't know, workshops, have more designers coming. So that's definitely something that I'm trying to build. So for example, this year we've had an open call as well. So we're having the standard designers in residence, but we're also having junior designers coming for a shorter period we're mentoring them, we're giving them input. So that's something that I'd really like to grow and expand more on.
What is it with design and castles? Because there's Bois Boucher in France, which is a little chateau, which has a sort of educational program for designers. And there's, I'm not sure if it's still going, but Kreki in Czech Republic, or on the Czech-Polish
yes.
border. It's a castle there that was taken over by a design institution. There seems to be a bit of a castle meets design thing going on.
Yeah, I guess it's a trend we need to explore more. I think it's just because when you're dealing with the castle, you have this kind of contrast between something which is historical, but you need to make it work in contemporary terms. So there's a lot of real kind of like problems and questions, and how do you solve it? So I think that kind of makes it interesting for a designer. It's like, how do you combine, something which is historical and beautiful with actually being able to live into it? So I think that's what, and a lot of the kind of solutions that you would find ready on the market are not ideal. So I think that's when a designer can really bring something in, keeping the history, keeping the tradition, but adding something which is functional and practical and beautiful.
And you mentioned that the castle dates back centuries, and of course, like lots of historic buildings, various bits have been added in different styles over the years. Could you do something contemporary there? Could you have like a glass tower in the middle of the castle, or a sort of a?
I mean, we've got a very good relationship with the office that manages, historical buildings. But I think building something like a big glass tower wouldn't be super appreciated. We have quite a lot of room to play inside the rooms. But I think outside it's a little bit, I mean, at one point I was like, oh, I'd love to invite Katarina Krosse and have her, spray paint the whole wall. And that was like, that's not going to work. So I think we're leaving the outside more conservative.
And the nearest city to you is Graz. And Graz, of course, had this extremely brave architectural intervention, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, when Peter Cook designed that.
Yeah, it was actually the year I moved to Austria, so it was 2003.
So there's a precedent there for dropping something space.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I think it fits incredibly well from the proportions in the structure of the city. But it was extremely brave. Yeah, it was very well accepted, actually. It's interesting.
And tell us about the themes of the exhibition. Obviously on the tour, the video tour we're going to see in a minute, you'll talk about the theme of this year's exhibition, but how do you choose the themes, and what themes have you chosen in the past for the shows?
Well, I try, it's always a mixture. So it's very important for me that the theme fits to the castle. So it has to have a meaning for the place in itself. So it has to have a real context. But then I usually choose themes which I think feel relevant to the time. Sometimes they have something to do with, I don't know, something I'm going through. So maybe there's something that I'm experiencing, which I feel, okay, there's other people feeling pretty much the same. The theme for this year, Walden, I really wanted to talk about ecology. There have been some extremely interesting and groundbreaking exhibition about nature in the past two years. And I felt, okay, let's keep the conversation going, let's add to it. And so the idea was really to start with the ecology, but not talk about, oh, we're doing so much disaster, and not talk about guilt feelings, because I think and not talk about political positions, because I think these are all ways of talking about ecology, which are actually doing a lot of damage because they're pushing people away and making them ignore the problem. So I was trying to find a way to make us fall in love with nature again. So it was about talking about nature being wild and unreliable, but embracing this aspect of it. So the title actually obviously comes from Thoreau's book, Walden, but I liked it because Wald in German means forest. So Walden sounds a little bit like foresting or rewilding. And that was a little bit the idea, really bringing a bit of wilderness into our everyday life so that we kind of, reevaluate our relationship with nature.
And what about your personal taste? What is the inside of the castle like? Is it sort of all chandeliers and heavy mahogany polished tables and things like that, or have you brought in a kind of contemporary twist?
Well, I'm trying every year. So when I first moved here, I was very scared. I was like, how am I ever going to, make this place feel contemporary or relevant? It's not. There are a lot of chandeliers, yes, in every room pretty much. It's quite an eclectic mix. There's a lot of Chinese wallpapers, silk wallpapers. There's a lot of Italian crystal, Italian glass, blown glass, and Bohemian crystals. The furniture is very eclectic. And I think it's just bringing in, regularly, I started with like smaller contemporary objects, and then you get a little bit braver. So now I'm definitely mixing all sorts of contemporary with old things. And I think it's just a question of quality. If the quality is good, you can mix anything. If the contemporary pieces are well made, they have a craft, they have a meaning, they're beautiful, then they're just going to compete just as well with a Chinese chest or a mahogany table or something. So.
And your husband doesn't freak out when you bring something contemporary into the castle?
No, actually, he doesn't. He's very good. Some things he likes better than others. I'll admit to that. The only thing he doesn't like is when I move things around and I don't record it. That drives him insane. It's like, have you signed it in the inventory that you've moved it to one room from another? And if I don't do that and I'm not very meticulous about that, that gets him really upset. He's a real curator because he's taking care of the collection. I'm just having a lot of fun.
Well, the place is so big, you could probably slip things in. You wouldn't notice it for months and months.
Well, actually, I'm always surprised. He does notice when something is not where it should be. But I had my little revenge because last year there was a piece I took an historical piece from an exhibition and I put it in the contemporary exhibition. And he was like, where does that come from? And I was like, well, that sits normally in the library on top of the fireplace in that corner, whatever. It's like, I wouldn't have known that. And I was like, I'm starting to get to know the place better than he does.
Brilliant. And finally, what is the lockdown situation in Austria now? Will people be able to come see the show before it finishes? Are restrictions being eased?
Restrictions are being eased a lot. So actually, I have to say, we were never as rigid as, for example, Italy. And school is starting on Monday again, finally. And you can travel within Austria. We still haven't got open borders, of course. There's still no flights anywhere. You have to wear a mask in every shop, and people wear it in public walking down the streets a lot as well. You can even spot people in the car with a mask. So they're very conscious about that. We're not allowed any public events till the end of May, which means that it's not feasible for us to open at all. And so that's a little bit the situation. So no public events, no gatherings till basically June, some things even July. But it's been very, very slow, step by step. So, and it was never dramatic, I have to say, the situation here in Austria.
But you're having to keep the drawbridge pulled up for now at least.
This year, unfortunately, yes.
Brilliant. Well, it's great to talk to you, Alice. And
thank you, Marcus.
I'm glad we managed to make it happen second time around.
Yeah.
And I'll see you soon. And now we're going to play the video that you recorded last week of the tour of the castle and the Walden exhibition.
Perfect.
So great to chat. See you soon.
Bye. Hi everybody, welcome to Walden. We're here in Schloss Hollenegg in Austria today, and I'm super excited to show you around the exhibition that we have put together in the last year. I hope you have a glass of wine with you. You can sit comfortably and follow us on this tour. It's an opening. Unfortunately, this year we can't have people here, so it's only going to be online, but we've really put a lot of effort in showing and doing the exhibition as if we would have guests and visitors. So I hope you will enjoy our little tour. Today we're showing the work of 20 emerging designers. I would like to thank them all for their amazing work and their very thoughtful insights. The theme of the exhibition, Walden, is about the environmental crisis. We wanted to talk about ecology, but we want to give it a very positive spin. A lot of the narrative about ecology and the environmental crisis is very guilt-inducing, is very politicized, and we wanted to have a different approach to it. Walden, the name, obviously comes from Henry David Thoreau's very famous book about his experience in living in a cabin for 2 years in the woodland. But the reason why I particularly like the name is that in German the word Wald means forest. So when you say Walden, you kind of get the idea of like foresting or rewilding. What I found particularly interesting about the book is the fact that after 2 years living in the forest, in nature, Thoreau actually went back to the city, to people, and to civilization. And I think in the last months we've all really realized how important on one side is the possibility of going out in nature, and on the other hand, how important people are to us. So I don't think it's really about choosing between the countryside and the city, between the natural and the artificial, between nature and technology. It's just trying to really mix all these elements and getting the most out of it. We're now going to start the tour. We're going into the Saal. It's a very large Baroque room. It's all frescoed. The acoustics are not the best, so I'll try to talk very clearly and slowly. Bear with me if you don't understand everything. I hope you enjoy the tour. Come along. So as you can see, we've tried to really bring nature in these rooms, in the walls, and we have created a little bit of a forest for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, and then Mara, who is behind the camera and following me around, will zoom into the individual projects so you get to see them a little bit better. What we have here below on the ground near me is a project by Studio B Severin. That's Birgit and Guillaume. They are from Berlin, and they've spent a great part of last year in Japan exploring the rituals of cleaning as a philosophy and as a way of finding meditation. So they have developed 3 jewelry pieces. The one is a necklace with a little sponge, and then they have developed a bracelet with a cloth that covers your hand, and the third one, they are rings to be put on your fingertips. And the idea of these jewelry is for cleaning rituals. So the sponge and the necklace is to clean your face, the cloth with the bracelet is to clean your home, and the 3 fingertips are to pick up rubbish when you are on a walk in the countryside. And the idea is to really, you need to bring attention to the whole environment, starting with ourselves, in order to be respectful for nature. And the second project we have here is a project by Misha Traxler. Katharina and Thomas are 2 Austrian designers, and this project of theirs is part of their ongoing research called Real Limited. What they've done here is they've tried to visualize a species of which there are less and less exemplars. So these grass is actually on a species which is being extinguished. There's only 200 specimens of them, and these are made out of patinated brass, and each one of them is numbered. So each one of these blades of grass actually represents a blade of grass which is in nature. And we have 40 of them here. And obviously the idea is on one side to visualize the loss of habitat and the loss of nature we're having, and on the other hand is the idea of bringing some of that nature into our living room. So what they have created here is a table. So if you follow me now, here we have a project by Arvid and Marie. They are a French-Dutch duo designer. They're very conceptual in their work, very technological as well. And what we have here is a dry toilet. Now, the main purpose of the dry toilet is to reuse our human waste for compost and for fertilizers. The principle is very basic. There's not a lot of technology involved in it. What's interesting is that they have created a kind of totem figure. It's inspired by Romanesque columns, where the capital always has stories engraved in them and figures of animals and people. So what they've done here is at the top and at the bottom, they have 3D printed the story of the cycle of water and waste to give it a new importance. And here, next to me, on the other side, we have a project by Odd Matter. Odd Matter are Els and Georgi. They are a Dutch-Bulgarian duo working from Rotterdam. They've just had a baby, so we're super excited for them. Congratulations to them. And this piece, it's a plant holder, and it's made entirely out of mud. Now, mud is obviously something that we're not usually very comfortable with. It's messy, it's dirty, we try and avoid it. But mud is also the first material which we have used in the construction of homes. So it's something which is very readily available, and it's something that everyone has access to. So the idea of this piece, of course, is on one side using the materials that we have at disposal, and on the other hand is soil to the soil and earth for growth. Here we have a project by Destroyers and Builders. This is a small stool, and it's made out of wood, but it has this kind of very primitive aesthetic, and actually most people are reminded of Stonehenge and the way stones can sit on each other. I think it's a good example of doing something very beautiful but simple and with this primitive aesthetic. And here we have a project by Commonplace Studio. Now, this requires a little bit more of an explanation. This is a flipboard. These flipboards are normally used, or were used at airports. This one has been painted in a different color, and it's meant to be connected to the weather station at Graz Airport. So what it does, it actually brings the weather inside. Now, I'm sure you've all had the experience at least once of finding yourself in an indoor space like, you know, a shopping center or a hospital or maybe a museum or even just the office, and haven't even realized what the weather outside was like. And the idea of this piece is to really bring that sensation of the weather changing from the outside into the inside. So I'll show you a little bit on display motors. And we move on. So if you look through the plants, hidden away in the woodland, we have a chair. This is a chair by Jonas Edvard. He's a designer from Denmark. And this chair is made out of mycelium. Mycelium are the roots of mushrooms. So what he does, he creates a structure which is made out of paper or hemp, and he lets the mushrooms grow all over it until he gets the shape that he really wants. And then he makes sure that the whole piece is dried out so that the growth stops. What's interesting about this piece of furniture is obviously you can use it, but once you don't need it anymore, you can give it back to nature and it becomes nutrient for the woodland again. So it really is a complete cycle. And here we have the last project of this room. This is a lamp by Sander Wassink. He's a Dutch designer, and it's a bucket spilling water. Now, a bucket that's spilled is mainly really a nuisance because you have to clean it up, and it's just being, you know, not careful about something. But at the same time, water sometimes acts like a mirror, so you might get a nice surprise. And in this case, the water, so-called, is reflecting the sky. So there's a certain poetic aspect to it. you know, if sometimes you just accept that things go wrong, you might get a really nice surprise. So this is the first room. We'll move on to the other parts of the castle. So just keep following me and let's go. We have here a project by Eva-Lie Wagner. Eva-Lie is an Austrian designer, and she was inspired by the theme, obviously, but also by The Baron in the Tree, which is a book by Italo Calvino. And what she really wanted to create was a little corner of wilderness within the architecture. And what I love about this project is the fact that it really manages to make nature look like it's growing out of the walls. It's a perfect example of how we should really try to combine architecture with nature and give a bit of space to both. Come along. So what we have here is the first project from one of our designers in residence. Every year we have 3 to 4 designers coming in residence over the summer, and they let themselves be inspired, of course, by the theme, but also by the history and the place of the castle. And this rug was done by Madeleine Rissoud. She's a French designer. She's the daughter of a beekeeper, and she's always been very interested with insects. So she's worked with silk worms, and she's worked a lot with bees. But even in spite of her background, when she came to Hollenegg, she was really surprised by the amount of insects that there are in Hollenegg. And I remember when I first moved here, I was really overwhelmed by the fact that so animals were coming into the rooms. And then at some point, I just got used to it and kind of embraced it. But Madeleine thought, okay, this is a good starting point. So she did a lot of drawings, and the idea of these drawings is to represent the swarms of insects, the way that they move across the sky and the earth. This rug was made in collaboration with Sissi Tapis, which is an Italian company making rugs. They make all their rugs in Nepal with Tibetan craftsmen. And there are about 6 or 7 different colors, I think. And all these colors in the rug are actually natural colors. It's a color of the wool. So what we particularly like is the fact that this rug is extremely environmental friendly because it uses no chemicals and no colorings. And from a distance, it really looks like it's just drawn. But if you zoom in, you can see the texture much better. Okay, and let's move on. So here we are in the red Gobelins-Zimmer. Most of the furniture and the tapestry in this room are obviously red, and there's a lot of wood. And what we have here is a chandelier by Sophie Dries. She worked in collaboration with Kaya Lighting Company. That's a company based in London, but with production near Vienna. And the lamps, the chandeliers that they usually do are very geometric. They use a lot of brass, and they have a very modernist feeling to it. So the challenge for this project was really to give a more, combine a little bit more this natural element and bring in more natural shapes. So Sophie changed the normally round, hand-blown spheres for egg-shaped ones, and she brought in a different material. So what you see above the eggs is actually paper, and this is an Italian company that makes paper out of, furniture and objects out of paper. And this obviously reminds us a little bit of eggshells, but also I think of the bark of trees. So it's really a really successful mixture between something very natural looking and something very geometric. So we're now in the blue Gobelins-Zimmer. Gobelins are these very large tapestries behind me, and they are Brussels tapestries from the 17th century, and they tell the story of Moses. There was another tapestry on this wall, which you see here behind me, and this tapestry was moved to a different room about 70 years ago, which meant that this was almost the only white wall in all of Hollenegg. And I've been thinking about doing something with it, and about a year and a half ago I started talking to it with Calico Wallpaper. They are a wallpaper company based in New York, and together we approached Charlotte, Hyman and Herrero. They were our second designers in residence, and they had the not very easy task of thinking of the wallpaper for this room. When they came, the courtyard was like now completely covered in vines, and they decided to bring that aspect of the castle into the room. But what I really love is that they didn't just stop at the wall, they actually covered the whole ceiling with the wallpaper. And if you've got good eyes, you can spot lots of small insects crawling around. And my favorite bit is this corner, because you have the stove, which is green with a flower motif. You have the trees in the tapestry, and above you have all the ceiling covered with the leaves. So I think it all comes together really, really well. Here we have a project by Stadio Portable. That's Tetsuo and Bernadette. They work from London. Come closer, have a look. These are branches made out of a razor, and these pencils are made out of different kinds of wood. So the idea is really, how do we use the natural resources, and are we erasing too much of nature, and are we able to then draw it back? And there's one sentence that Tetsuo mentioned, which I really like, which is that after we have erased something, the line that comes after, it's always much more thoughtful. So hopefully that's a nice way to looking at the natural resources. Here we have a project by Crafty Plastics. They were also designers in residence, so they were our third designer in residence. They are from Bratislava, and Crafty Plastics have developed a material which is called Nuatan, which is a biological plastic. It's not plastic at all because it's 100% recyclable and biological material, but it works like plastic in the sense that you can make sheets and you can heat it and you can mold it. And here they have created a kind of window pane as kind of separation between the inside and the outside. But because of the translucence, it really works very well when there's sunlight and throughout the day. And the idea is to cover and reveal the outside world. So all the panels, you can really move them and play around and see what is outside. Now, if you look out there, there's a few chickens, but there's also a 4 flags installation. That's a project by Marianne Droes. That was a graduation project at Design Academy. It's called Soils in Residence. The 4 pictures that you see on the flags, they are chromotherapy images of soil. It's a very easy laboratory technique to see the nutrients of your soil. And what she has developed is a project which is called Soils in Residency, which helps soils pass to each other their properties. The idea is to really create knowledge for a community and to help communities be masters of their own land and really understand the properties and how to best manage their own soils. room, which I affectionately call the insect room. And because of a lot of glass, it's very warm, and because the windows are old, insects like coming in and staying in here. So Studio Toot, which are Sylvia and Marie from Vienna, have developed a didactic project about flies. Now, most people don't particularly like flies. If I tell you, let's say the bees, everyone likes that. But flies are mostly annoying, and we only notice them when they kind of get in the way. But just like every other animal, they are really important for the ecosystem. So Sylvia and Marie have discovered lots of fun facts about flies. The installation is in German, but there's lots of interesting facts that you can discover. For example, flies are wonderful in pollinators, so they pollinate broccoli, onions, and strawberries, for example. And another interesting fact that you can find out is that flies actually love having sex, and they even do it while they're flying. Come along. So this is the fourth project by our designers in residence. Clemens Schillinger is an Austrian designer who lives in Vienna. And when the designers come and stay with us, they live in the tower. And they usually prepare, they cater for themselves for breakfast and lunch, but we always invite them over for dinner. And Clemens found himself several times walking back in pitch darkness after dinner. So he thought that would be a great opportunity to go back to a project he had developed a few years back and explore it further. So he developed a lamp with a crank. And the idea is really to show how much energy we need to make light. So for every 2 minutes of turning, you only get 1 minute of light. The idea is to really make us realize how much effort that is. The good thing is, once you have finished loading up your light, you can actually take it off as if it was a candle. And he hasn't just designed one lamp, he's actually designed 2 more. So let's go and see those. So here we have a version integrated in a desk and works with pedals the way that old sewing machine used to work. And we have a third one here, which is meant to be for a desk or a table, and it works in the same way as the first one that we have seen. Okay, now let's move on. So I'm just going to make you listen to this for a second or two. This is a project by Marie-Lou Petot. She's a French designer. She works a lot with sound, and she recorded the sounds of birds and created a composition. This is something that you can explore on our website. We have a wonderful 3D tour and lots of information on all the projects, so you can hear the whole audio. We're now in the second courtyard of Schloss Hollenegg. Schloss Hollenegg's first mention goes back to 1163, and it was built over the next 800 years. So you really have every single style, from the medieval walls and the two towers to the Renaissance courtyard. And here behind me, we have the Baroque church. It's quite unusual for castles to have such a large church. Most of them have a small chapel, but we actually use this for the parish from May to October. So it's usually lovely when people come in for church on a Sunday. And sometimes we even get the brass band. And now we're just going to go and see the very last of our project. So this is a Zoomloch. This is a humming sculpture. This is by B&AG. They are a German duo based in Karlsruhe. The idea of a Zoomloch is to place your head in a hole and just do a humming sound. The structure kind of reverberates the sound that you're making, so you have a kind of meditative effect, and it's a way of coming in harmony with yourself and with the surrounding. And we all know life can be pretty tough at times, so I think it's a really great idea for every one of us to have a Zoomloch sculpture in our home or in our garden. They don't all have to be this big, but it might be nice to have, you know, this kind of time to go back and use our own voice as a calming instrument. And for us, Luki and Ollie have actually recorded some Zam poetry. That's also something that you can go and see on our website. We're very, very sorry not to have you all here. It's extremely sad without the whole designers joining us and the visitors coming. It's always fun to have a party and a bit of a dance after all the work that we've done. But we've tried to put as much content online as possible. So I hope you've enjoyed this tour. And you can now go online at Adorno. You can find beautiful pictures, images of all the projects, and a very in-depth description. And on our own website, we have a video of the exhibition, and we also have a 3D tour, which is pretty amazing. It's a little bit like a video game, so you walk through the rooms and you can click on all the projects, and you can see short videos. Every designer has recorded a video while they were in quarantine. It's short videos, they're fun. They're a great way of getting to know all our wonderful designers. And I'd like to thank all our partners. I'd like to thank Dezeen as well for this opportunity of showing you all around again. And I really hope to get to welcome you again very, very soon. Thank you for joining us.